Okay, finally we get to the Castle House at the corner of. Sorry, I'm moving this around here. It's not on a flat surface. I had to move. The sun was too bright. Anyways, we get to the Castle House at Ninth and Euclid. So the Castle House, if you look at it, what's it look like? A castle. And that's why we call it the Castle House. This house was built. The story goes that in the early 20th century, there's a lovely young woman in Boulder who let it be known to the men around town that she would marry the man who built her the most magnificent house. The winner was Benjamin Franklin Gregg, who built this house in 1905. It originally had 32 different rooms on 5 different levels. It's got a narrow, winding staircase through the middle. And in the basement, under the front porch, there's a room with a dirt floor. Because if you're going to have a castle, you got to have a dungeon. Well, some weird stuff has gone on in this house. In particular, weird things happened to a woman named Ruth Savick, a sculptor who lived here with her husband and 2 children in the 1960s. And, Ruth's experiences, they always felt, to begin with, that the house was crowded, that there were more people in the house than just the 4 of them who were living there. And they had a bunch of little weird things, but here are the main things that happened to them. First, not all that scary, but pretty weird. Ruth is making dinner with her son in the kitchen one day, and they hear some 1920s style music coming from, well, that's a problem. They had no idea where it could be coming from. They didn't have a radio on. They didn't even own a television. The windows were all closed. So they used their ears and they followed the source of the music, and it just appeared to be coming out of the cement wall in the basement with no explanation. Well, then things got a little weirder. Were a lot weirder, in fact. So one night, Ruth is in bed asleep with her husband, and their 5-year-old daughter comes running in, screaming, "Mommy, Daddy, a big man is shaking my bed." Well, they just figured the girl was having a nightmare, as children do, and they calm her down, and they finally take her back to her room, and this girl slept in a big metal bed that had been left behind by the previous owners, because it was too big and cumbersome to move out of the house down the narrow staircase. Well, when they took the daughter back to the room, that bed had been moved 3 feet from the wall, something no 5-year-old girl could have done by herself. The last weird thing that happened in one day, Ruth is sitting in one of the many little parlors in the house. She's doing a crossword puzzle, and she looks up, and sitting across the room from her in a chair is this ugly old woman. The woman says, "Get out of this house. Get out of this house. This is my house." And Ruth has had enough of this stuff by then, so she yells back, "No, this is my house. You leave." And the woman went away. But when Ruth looked down at what she was doing, instead of doing the crossword puzzle, she had actually drawn a picture of this woman. So where did all these extra people and weird things come from? Well, the bed thing, we have kind of an explanation, because shortly after that happened, Ruth ran into the woman she had bought the house from and told her what happened, and the woman said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. My father-in-law, he died in that bed after being bedridden in it for 6 months, and he was very angry the whole time." Oops. As for the rest, well, nobody knows for sure what this house has been during the years of its existence, but we do know that in the 30s, 2 different men who made their living as undertakers lived here. And now the front door of the house is pretty wide enough maybe for a casket, and there's that dungeon under the front porch. So perhaps this house was a funeral home, and that's where these extra spirits are coming from. Or maybe these guys were just bringing some of their work home with them. Now, while I got you here, my friends, let me give you the ghost story addendum for the Boulder Theater. If anybody else ever watches this video, they're going to wonder what the hell is going on. Anyways, here's the ghost story addendum. So we tell the story the regular way, and then this is what I say. Now, if you've been on our regular tour, you've heard that story. But we have a special ghost story addendum. There's a woman who worked in the ticket office. And like most people in Boulder, she's also an artist. And she's in her, she's the last person to leave one night. She's down in the basement near the boiler room, and she's finishing up whatever work it is that she has to finish up before she goes home. And she feels this really creepy, weird feeling come over her. And she's totally freaked out by the experience. She just drops her work. She runs home. She can't stand to stay in the building. When she gets home, because she's an artist, she creates a painting from what's in her head from having this creepy experience. The next day, when she goes back into work, she takes that painting in and gives it to her boss. It's kind of a peace offering for not finishing her work. And her boss looks at this painting of a man hanging from a rope over a stage and said, he's wearing a hat also, and says, "Oh, you painted a picture of George." And her boss, and the artist rather, says, "Who?" She'd painted that picture, but she had never seen the painting of George or heard the story of George that I just told you about. And now, when you work for Banjo Billy's, people know who you are, sort of. And we were in there happy houring one night, and we had heard this just after we had heard about this. And so we begged and pleaded and tipped our way we wanted to go down in the basement and see this because we heard it was down in the basement, and we wanted to go down there and see it. And they wouldn't let us go down, but they did bring us up and show it to us. So I've seen that painting, and it is creepy. There you go. Enjoy.